The news broke quietly at first, a whispered update from a crew member, a vague social media post from a hospital visitor. But within hours, it spread like wildfire. Sam Heughan had been admitted to the hospital. The man fans knew as the unshakable Jamie Fraser was suddenly fragile, and the world seemed to hold its breath. No one knew the full story. Some reports said he had collapsed from exhaustion after weeks of filming and charity work. Others claimed it was stress-related, that he'd been pushing himself too hard for too long. But for Caitríona Balfe, it wasn't about headlines or rumors, it was about fear. Real, gut-deep fear for someone who had been by her side for nearly a decade. She was in the middle of a voice recording session when her phone buzzed. The message was short. "Sam's in the hospital." Everything else stopped. The microphone, the script, the director's voice. They all faded into silence as she read those words again and again. Within the hour, she was on her way to see him, praying the drive wouldn't end with bad news. When she arrived, the hospital corridor felt unnervingly still. Cameras were already gathering outside, flashes going off whenever someone exited the building. Caitríona kept her head down, wearing a cap and mask, hoping to slip in unnoticed. But even in disguise, she couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. Sam was resting, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily beside him. His skin looked pale, his breathing shallow but steady. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring, half in disbelief, half in pain. This was the man who'd carried Outlander on his shoulders, who'd smiled through sleepless nights and demanding schedules, who'd always told everyone, "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine, not this time. The doctor explained that Sam had been under immense pressure, too many commitments, too little rest. His body had simply said enough. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough to force him to stop, something Sam rarely allowed himself to do. Caitríona sat beside his bed, taking his hand gently. His fingers twitched slightly at her touch, and her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she whispered. "Not for me, not for anyone." It wasn't the first time she'd seen him tired, but it was the first time she'd seen him break. Fame had its cost, and for Sam, that cost had always been hidden behind his professionalism. Even when he was hurting, he smiled for the fans, posed for photos, and said everything was wonderful. But now, lying there surrounded by sterile white walls, there was no pretending left. As she sat there, her mind drifted through memories, their first day on set, the laughter between takes, the countless moments of silent understanding. Sam had been more than a co-star, he had been her anchor through chaos. When her own world felt too heavy, he was the one who'd made her laugh again. And now, seeing him so still, she felt powerless. Hours passed. She stayed even when visiting hours ended, quietly refusing to leave. Every few minutes she would whisper something, stories, encouragement, anything to keep the silence from swallowing them both. "You've carried everyone for so long," she murmured softly. "It's time to let someone carry you." Meanwhile, outside, the media had already spun the story into something dramatic. Sam Heughan's mysterious collapse. Caitríona rushes to his side. Fans flooded social media with messages of love and concern. #StayStrongSam trended globally. Some even speculated about Caitríona's emotional visit, with photos of her car entering the hospital gate sparking wild theories about their relationship. But none of that mattered to her. What mattered was the rise and fall of his chest, the rhythm of a friend, a partner, a brother in spirit who had given too much of himself to the world. She leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. "But you don't have to prove it to anyone. Just, come back, okay?" For the first time in hours, Sam stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. When they met hers, there was a faint smile, weak but real. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped softly. She laughed through her tears. "Too bad, I'm not leaving." And in that quiet hospital room, surrounded by machines and unspoken words, a truth settled between them, unbreakable, unspoken, but real. Whatever the world thought, whatever the headlines would say, none of it mattered. Because at that moment, Caitríona Balfe wasn't a co-star. She wasn't a celebrity. She was simply someone who cared, deeply, fiercely, and without apology. And as the night deepened, she made a silent promise. She wouldn't let him face this alone. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, painting soft lines across the sterile hospital floor. The beeping machines were steady now, a quiet rhythm of reassurance. Sam Heughan had been awake for several hours, still weak but lucid enough to joke with the nurse. Caitríona Balfe sat nearby, wrapped in a cardigan, her eyes showing the fatigue of someone who hadn't slept in days. When Sam finally looked at her properly, his first words were barely above a whisper. "You stayed." She smiled faintly. "You didn't give me much choice." It was the kind of banter that had carried them through years of filming and friendship, but this time, it was laced with emotion. Beneath the light words, there was relief, pure and unspoken. The hospital had kept everything quiet, but outside, the story had exploded. Photos of Caitríona leaving the hospital at dawn had flooded social media, her worried expression sparking sympathy and speculation in equal measure. Fans were praying for Sam's recovery, sending thousands of messages, letters, and digital tributes. The hashtag #StayStrongSam remained trending for 3 straight days. Inside, the atmosphere was much simpler, just two people trying to find normalcy amid chaos. "I didn't realize how bad it was," Sam said finally, his voice low. "Guess I've been pretending I'm invincible." "You always do," she replied gently. "You take on everything, the fans, the charity work, the interviews, and you forget you're human." He sighed. "I didn't want to disappoint anyone." That line pierced her heart. For years, she'd watched him give everything, his time, his energy, his heart, to the people who adored him. He was always the first to arrive, the last to leave, the one who smiled even when he was breaking. It was his gift, and his curse. Caitríona reached for his hand. "You've already given more than anyone could ask. No one expects you to be perfect, Sam. They just want you to be okay." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "And you? What do you want?" Her lips trembled as she exhaled. "I just want you to stay strong. To stop carrying everything alone." There was silence after that, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Later that afternoon, Sam's publicist released a brief statement thanking fans for their support and confirming that he was recovering and in good spirits. The message was calm, professional, but it couldn't hide the truth. He'd been through something serious. Hours later, Caitríona posted on Instagram for the first time since the news broke. It was a photo of the sunrise over Glasgow with a caption that read, "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is rest. Heal, my friend." Within minutes, fans flooded the comments, connecting the post to Sam's condition. Some wrote prayers. Others shared their own stories of exhaustion and healing. It became more than a celebrity moment. It became a message of empathy. Back in the hospital, Sam saw the post. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You always know how to make me emotional," he murmured. "That's my job," she teased. "Keeping Jamie Fraser humble." He grinned weakly, but the gratitude in his eyes said everything. As days turned into a week, Sam grew stronger. The color returned to his face, his laughter returned to the room. When he was finally discharged, the cameras were waiting, but Caitríona helped him slip out through a private exit. They didn't say much on the ride home, just comfortable silence, the kind born from years of shared battles. Before she left, Caitríona turned to him. "Promise me something." "Anything. When you feel tired again, don't hide it. Don't try to be everyone's hero." He smiled softly. "You'll remind me?" "Always." For a moment, neither moved. There were 1,000 things unspoken between them, gratitude, affection, maybe something deeper, but they didn't need to define it. What they had was rare, born from years of trust and mutual respect. In the following weeks, when Sam reappeared on social media, he looked different, not just healthier, but lighter. His caption under a new photo read simply, "Still here. Still grateful. Thank you." Fans rejoiced, But those who had followed him closely saw something beyond the words. They saw a man who had finally allowed himself to be human, and a woman who had stood beside him when the cameras weren't rolling. Caitríona continued to visit him quietly, bringing books, tea, and laughter. No fanfare, no photos, just friendship. The kind of friendship that survives fame, rumors, and time. And though the world may never know the full truth of what passed between them in those long, quiet nights in the hospital, one thing was certain. The bond between Sam Heughan and Caitríona Balfe had grown stronger than ever. It wasn't built on romance or headlines. It was built on care, resilience, and an understanding that even the strongest people sometimes need to fall apart to find themselves again. And for Caitríona, watching him smile again was all the proof she needed that miracles don't always look like grand gestures. Sometimes, they look like someone finally choosing to stay.